Radiological imaging, and the first topic is on the age-old techniques, that is the IVU and MCU, and we shall be discussing the proper technique to do these things and their current relevance in 2020. So since we are talking about such old techniques, a brief interesting take on the history is relevant. So the attempts at urological imaging began as early as 1920s, where negative contrast media were instilled cystoscopically, like air and carbon dioxide, into the PCS. And this was mainly in the realm of urologists because cystoscopy was required. But by 1930s, urosilictan was a compound that was detected, which could be safely injected intravenously. It was excreted by the kidneys and also seen on X-rays. So this is how IVU came into being. By the 1950s, various tri-iodo contrast media like Hypake and Conray had been developed, so that by 1960s, IVU became the mainstay of urological imaging, and various maneuvers like abdominal compression, test dose, and drip infusion technique were being tried. By 1970s, for example, tomography became a routine part of the IVU sequence. 1980s saw a paradigm shift in imaging because of the development of the cross-sectional imaging modalities and safer contrast media. The urological front was also observing advances in the endoscopic procedures. By 1990s, we had spiral CT and mechanical injectors, which made CT urography possible. And since then, various advances have been occurring, and CT urography has been constantly giving competition to IVU as the dominant imaging modality in uroradiology. Now, these are the current day protocols of the urology associations in imaging and management of calculi. And nowhere do these include IVU. They mainly include NCCT abdomen, whether or not low-dose protocol or ultrasound or a KV radiograph combination. However, if we look at the radiation dose by IVU and even that of a single-phase non-contrast CT, it is more than thrice. So looking at this, we can say that the ideal global urinary tract examination still remains controversial. Therefore, the still accepted indications of IVU in 2020 would be the evaluation of suspected or known urethral obstruction, assessment of the integrity of urinary tract following trauma or therapeutic interventions, particularly when the patient is too unstable to undergo a CT examination, assessment of congenital anomalies, because IVU gives a holistic picture of the whole excretory system, urothelial lesions because of its high spatial resolution, and it can be used in follow-up of patients with recurrent calculi with an intent to reduce their radiation burden. The core technique of IVU has remained the same over the decades. That is, first a preliminary KUV radiograph is taken, then contrast is injected, and then there is a timed sequence so that the peak contrast concentration in each part of the excretory system is imaged. Bowel preparation was earlier considered mandatory, but now it is considered unnecessary. It rather dehydrates the patient and adds to the risk of contrast adverse reaction. It does not add much to the diagnostic value. So this is the initial KUB radiograph that is to be taken from the suprarenal area to the pubic symphysis, centered on the iliac crest. The KVP should be kept at 65 to 75, which is high enough to penetrate the abdominal soft tissues and low enough to pick up the soft calculi. The MA should be high to keep a short exposure time and reduce the motion blood. It is wrong to not collimate properly. It will increase the radiation burden. Extra collimation may sometimes cut off the suprarenal areas, which is a common mistake. And if the patient is very tall for a routine 14-17 cassette, then an extra film for the pelvis should be taken. It should not be left like this because one may miss the tiny urethral calculi. So once this is done and all the contraindications to contrast medium injection have been ruled out, one goes ahead with the contrast medium injection. And that is done by 1 milligram per kg body weight for a routine 300 milligram iodine contrast. And then one takes a 1 minute radiograph collimated to the renal areas. And this is the nephrographic phase wherein the contrast is at its peak in the renal nephrographic tubules. And this is the best image to assess the kidneys, their morphology, axis, size, etc., and any nephrographic defects. On IVU, there is inherent magnification, so 13 centimeter is kept as the upper limit of the cutoff of the renal size. And discrepancy in the size of both the kidneys, more than 2 centimeter or 1.5 centimeter, is also considered significant. This radiograph is collimated to the kidneys unless a previous ultrasound has shown that one of the renal fossas does not contain a kidney. In that case, the entire KUB radiograph is taken to identify an ectopic kidney. After this, the next radiograph is taken at 5 minutes post-injection. This is when the contrast has been excreted into the PCS. Both the kidneys should show simultaneous excretion. Any delay on any side would indicate that the IVU is going to be prolonged. After this, compression is applied so that the ureters are compressed against the sacrum, and this is not done in patients with recent surgery, any acute renal colic, tumors, trauma, or abdominal aortic aneurysm. Once the compression is applied, this is done to distend the PCS. Then another film is taken, again collimated to the renal areas only, which is the paleographic phase. And herein, the PCS anatomy is best seen. For example, we can see this is a trichalaecial PCS and this is a bichalaecial PCS on the right side, which is also a normal variant. And after 15 minutes of post-contrast injection, the compression is released so that the contrast can flow into the ureters, and one can see the ureters from the pelviureteric junction going along the outer thirds of the transverse processes, then along the iliac blade to the VUJ. A distance of more than 5 cm between the ureters is considered to be an indication of lateral deviation of ureters. Ureters lying over the pedicle or medial to them is an indication of medial deviation. Ureteric diameter of more than 7 mm would indicate ureteric dilatation. However, a continuous standing column of the ureter or a persistent abrupt transition in the ureter is also important. The next phase is, the next radiograph is collimated to the pelvis, and that is taken when the patient senses a full bladder, and this is for the capacity and outline of the bladder. Additional films can be taken. That is, for example, in this case, the right lower ureter has not been properly opacified. So one takes a prone film so that the contrast flows anteriorly into the lower ureter. Anterior films can also be taken earlier on to better identify the anterior calyces. Oblique films can be taken. For example, in this case, this opacity had to be ascertained whether it is exactly lying in the ureter only by displacing it from the sacrospinal shadows. Lateral films can be taken when any fistula is suspected. For example, in this case, there is a vesicovaginal fistula which is seen on the lateral view. Post-void film shows the post-void residue, the bladder mucosal folds, and any filling defects. So this is the routine radiographic sequence in the IVU. Now we come to the image interpretation. As you can see, this is the nephrographic phase. The right renal nephrogram is fine, but the nephrographic density is rather faint on the left side. There is delayed excretion on the 5-minute film, and this is the 10-minute film where one does see the calyceal density, but it is delayed. So for contrast to appear in the calyces, there should be proper uptake, proper tubular function, and proper tubular transit. Any disruption in this cycle would lead to any abnormality. For example, in this case, we can see that the uptake itself is abnormal. The renal size also appears to be slightly smaller. However, the renal outline is regular. So renal artery stenosis would be a good possibility in such a situation. Here again, this is again the nephrographic phase. The right renal nephrogram is normal. On the left side, we can see multiple calculi. The nephrogram seems to be absent, but look carefully. This rim kind of opacification of the peripheral renal parenchyma is seen with a negative impression of the dilated pyelogram. So this is rim nephrogram or the negative pyelogram sign. This indicates that the uptake is proper and the delayed excretion would be there. And this is the 5-minute film where there is some excretion, and the delayed film where there is increasingly dense pyelogram because of increased tubular transit because of distal obstruction. Here again, there is VUJ calculus, upstream dilatation. The right side contrast is completely cleared off, but even in the delayed films, there is persistent dense nephrogram here because of the distal urinary obstruction. Here, this is faintly visualized, but you can see that this kidney is there and there are faint small calculi within the kidney. And on the pylographic phase, the contrast has entered into small pools within the medullary pyramids. This is the appearance of a medullary sponge kidney. Now, coming to grades of hydronephrosis, which are important to learn. This is the normal calyceal system with sharp fornicial angles, deep papillary impressions. When there is slight blunting of the fornicial angle, this is grade 1 hydronephrosis. Obvious blunting, but the papillary impressions are still preserved, grade 2. Papillary impressions are also lost now, grade 3. Now there is convexity and ballooning of the pellices, grade 4. Now look at this query. This looks like a grossly dilated PCS, but then the papillary impressions are still maintained in most of the calyces. So this is a grade 2 and not grade 4. So morphology is important rather than the size. Now another clue is by the interpapillary line. If we join all the papillary tips, this forms the interpapillary line, which runs parallel to the renal outline, except for the dromedary humps and the renal hilar ribs, and this indicates the renal parenchymal thickness. Any deviation from this line would warrant an explanation. For example, in this case, this would be the interpapillary line, but there is a contrast-filled outpouching, which is projecting outside, and the renal parenchyma is thinned here. So this is focal parenchymal scarring with hydrocalyx. Here the interpapillary line is disrupted by presence of its extrinsic impression by a renal SOL. In this case, the papillary line is not seen in the interpolar region, and on the delayed films there is contrast pooling here. That means there is communication with the calyces. This pooling changes shape also and retains contrast in the delayed films also. So this is a calycial diverticulum which presents as an outpouching outside the interpapillary line. As we have already said, IVU can be used for evaluation of congenital malformations. This seems to be a very large renal calculus, but this is the renal shadow and it seems to be lying outside it. And this is the pylographic phase. The right kidney, there seems to be no excretion, left is okay. But then if you look at the spine, there is this increased density here and there is some calycial density here. And the ureter is also visualized. The calculus is seen to lie in the pelvis of this cross-fused ectopic kidney. This seems to be easy. There is duplicated system with duplicated ureters, but one must not forget the renal axis, which are both converging medially. So this is horseshoe kidney with duplicated right moiety. Here again, the left PCS looks normal. The right side number of calyces is much more, and they're not following the dichotomous pattern. So this is polycalicosis. Here, what we see is a dilated ureter, which at the middle part turns abruptly medially in a hook-shaped pattern. This is the typical appearance of a retrocable ureter. Here again, hydronephrosis, hydroureter. There is a filling defect in the bladder, which fills up to form a cobra head appearance. So this is typical for ureterocele. Now the next indication which we had studied was urothelial lesions. However, IV is no longer indicated for screening of the upper tract TCC in patients with known bladder CA because CT urography has been studied to be much superior. Rather, it can be used for diagnosis of other causes of hematuria like papillary necrosis and tuberculosis. Tubercular papillary necrosis begins in the medullary pyramid and then it can slough off to involve the calycial margin where the calyx becomes fuzzy, and this is the first IVU sign of renal tuberculosis. Later, the contrast may enter the cavity of the medullary pyramid as is seen in this case. This is the interpapillary line and this is the contrast in the cavity. There may be ulceration of the calycial wall which may heal by hydrocalicosis. And there may also be pylolymphatic reflux. So these findings in a combination may indicate a genitourinary tuberculosis. For example, in this case, in the IVU film, we can see the multiple calcified retroperitoneal lymph nodes. The lower polar calyx shows ulceration, and there is this egg in cup appearance because of contrast in the medullary pyramid. This is also a typical sign for papillary necrosis. Here, in another patient, we can see this calculus of a very abnormal irregular shape. This is because of the calculus stagnated in the ureteral stricture, and the upper polar calyx is also showing papillary necrosis and dilatation. IV is also useful in advanced old cases of genitourinary tuberculosis. For example, here it is showing the lower end stricture, delayed excretion on the left side, beading and irregular stricturing of the left ureter, and the bladder, even the full bladder phase, it is small and smooth. So this is typical thimble bladder, which is seen in the late stages of GU tuberculosis. Now the next modality is micturating avoiding cystourethrogram. This, unlike IVU, has still maintained its utility, and very few investigations can parallel the information that this provides. Particularly in children, its indications are far and wide as listed here. Most common indication, although, is detection of VUR or vesico-ureteric reflux. Now, there are various guidelines. One of the broadly accepted guidelines is that because of its radiation concern, VCUG is not used liberally, but it should be used in very young boys with abnormal ultrasound because of a risk of detection of congenital anomaly. Up to 6 years, only ultrasound may be just sufficient, and more than 6 years, usually no imaging is required because congenital anomalies are unlikely to be present. In first febrile UTI in girls, particularly, radionuclide cystography is preferred because of the lower radiation dose. However, VCUG is an important component of the evaluation of complicated or recurrent UTI, which is defined by these parameters. Because MCU involves a lot of radiation to the gonad, one must make all efforts in order to reduce the radiation. That is done by eliminating grid, using copper filter which reduces the surface dose, pulse time fluoroscopy, proper collimation and magnification, using last image capture versus a small spot radiograph, and monitoring the dose area product rather than simply fluoroscoping time. The first image acquired is usually a scout or plain radiograph, but if the patient is carrying one, then that can be skipped. The next image is taken after catheterization. Now, catheterization in young infants less than 3 months is done using an infant feeding tube of 5 French, and beyond that, mostly an 8 French feeding tube would suffice. The first image is taken when the bladder is in the early filling stage, and that is because one wants to detect the small filling defects. Here, a large filling defect is seen because of a ureterocele. Later, smaller filling defects may get obscured by the contrast density. While the bladder is being filled, we do not need to do any fluoroscopy or any spot radiographs. An older child can tell when he senses the full bladder, and for a younger child, one should keep an eye on the drip infusion. When the rate becomes lower, that means that the intravesical pressure is high enough. At that point, one takes steep oblique radiographs of the full bladder in the pre-voiding stage to look for any spontaneous reflux into the ureters. Later, a voiding radiograph is taken, and there is a debate whether voiding around the catheter should be preferred or catheter should be taken out. Largely, if we are looking at cyclical voiding in patients with spastic bladder, or it is a difficult detection of VUR, then one may let the catheter be in place. On the voiding radiograph, the entire urethra has to be profiled. The last image is taken of the renal areas to detect any reflux which might have been missed during fluoroscopy. Now, this was a child who came with incontinence. As soon as the catheter was removed, the urethra was opacified, but the bladder looks tall and elongated, and there was also a reflux up till the renal areas on both sides. So this was a case of neurogenic bladder. The lateral X-ray of the spine was showing partial agenesis of the sacrum. This is a very typical image: trabeculated bladder, dilated posterior urethra, prominent verumontanum, shelf-like filling defect, and abrupt transition into a normal anterior urethra. This is typical for posterior urethral valves. Another image here, bladder neck hypertrophy is also seen. This is also posterior urethral valves seen by the transition here, back pressure changes in the bladder, and patent urachus, which is a common association. This is an advanced case of PUV. This is the posterior urethra, and this is a small spastic hypertrophic bladder. Most of the contrast is refluxing into the tortuous dilated ureters. This is again PUV, dilated urethra, trabeculated bladder, but the later voiding phases showed a dramatic reflux into the grade 5 reflux into the bilateral kidneys, and this was retained even after the voiding phase. And this patient also had a lax abdominal wall and bilateral undescended testis. This triad of urinary obstruction, lax abdominal wall, and undescended testis is known as prune belly syndrome, and this is the typical appearance. This is also known as Eagle-Barrett syndrome. Now, this child had come with recurrent UTI. The bladder and the urethra appeared to be normal in the initial voiding phase, but later one of the ureters was opacified by reflux. The only thing was that the VUJ was not visualized, the lower part was not being opacified, and the ultrasound also showed a similar feature. The lower part was persistently collapsed. Similar thing on MRU also, the ureter is completely tortuous and there seems to be abrupt tapering at the lower end. So this was a congenital obstructed megaloureter because of the distal aperistaltic segment, but there is presence of reflux also. This was a refluxing obstructed megaureter. This is the most hazardous as far as infection is concerned because whatever refluxes is retained and stagnated. In this patient, the MCU is showing reflux of extravasation of contrast into large bowel. This was a case of anorectal malformation with rectourethral fistula. Although distal cologram is the primary modality, MCU can also act as a complementary modality in these cases. The indications in adults are also many. Main categories are detection of leaks, tears. In women, presence of vesicoenteric fistula, urethral strictures, where it is done in conjunction with the retrograde urethrogram. And in patients less than 50 years of age suspected of prostatic hyperplasia, to rule out any urethral abnormalities as the cause of symptoms. Here again, technique is important. Scout film may indicate any pre-existing trauma. Early bladder filling phase, here it has been filled by the indwelling suprapubic cystostomy catheter, full bladder AP view, and full bladder oblique views for any reflux. This is the voiding position, and the entire urethra has to be imaged in profile during voiding, and this is the post-void residue film. In MCU, the post-void residue is generally not physiological, and one may have to recheck it with more physiological methods like ultrasound. In females, a simple AP voiding radiograph is usually sufficient. This is the RGO, which is mostly done in conjunction, so we shall discuss it here. The tip of the urethra is catheterized using a Foris catheter, and contrast is instilled. The penile urethra, and where it dilates slightly, this is the bulbar urethra. This is the conical part of the bulbar urethra, where it terminates at the urogenital diaphragm at the level of the inferior margin of the obturator foramen. Gentle persistent pressure would generally lead to opacification of the posterior urethra also. From the bladder base till the veromontanum is the prostatic urethra, usually 3 centimeter in length. This is the veromontanum. Lower end of veromontanum till this conical tip, 1 to 1.5 centimeter, is the membranous urethra, which goes through the urogenital diaphragm. This membranous urethra position is important to identify because if this is involved, the surgical approach changes. Now, this is the RGU, which shows a stricture in the anterior urethra. In combination with the MCU, one can see that the length of the stricture is very short. Here again, this is a post-traumatic case. There is a stricture in the proximal penile and the bulbar urethra. There is also reflux up till the kidneys in the same patient. Here, there is a pooling of contrast to the urethra into the corpus spongiosum. This is a periurethral abscess in a patient with inflammatory urethritis as a sequelae. This is a female patient with incontinence. One can see this is a bladder, but additionally different mucosal folds type are seen. This is the vaginal mucosal fold. This was a vesico-vaginal fistula. Here again, you can see this typical pine tree appearance of the hypertrophic urinary bladder. And this is the plain film. One can see that the sacrum is incompletely visualized. So this is partial sacral agenesis and urogenic bladder. In this case, there is spina bifida in the plain film, and the bladder is opacified and is markedly enlarged. Rather, the dome of the bladder is merging with the abdominal soft tissues. So this is atonic type of neurogenic bladder. Now, we shall look at an interesting case. There was a young female who came with increased frequency of micturition, and this was the MCU. On a cursory look, this may be reported as a normal full bladder, but the shape is abnormal. The dome is abnormally flattened. So to settle this query, an ultrasound was done. The bladder could not be visualized. Rather, there was some fluid in the vagina, and both the ureters were surprisingly seen to drain into the vagina. So we cannulated the vestibular orifice again, and under fluoro, it was seen that this had vaginal kind of mucosal folds, and there was spontaneous reflux into the ectopic ureter. The patient had developed the vagina fornix as a reservoir and could void on command through the vagina. This was a CT. This is moderately dilated PCS in the same patient, and there is milk of calcium here because of chronic hydronephrosis, and both the ureters were draining into the vagina. MR shows the retropubic space to be filled by fat only. This is the lower urethra, which is merging superiorly with the vaginal wall, and this is the fluid distended vagina. So this sometimes such a bizarre case may also appear. This was a case of urinary bladder agenesis, and therefore both the ureters were ectopic and draining into the vagina. So now coming to the conclusions, IVU is no longer the leading urological imaging investigation. However, its low radiation dose, cost, availability, and ease maintain that it does not still has lost favor completely. A good technique and careful interpretation will reveal precious information and knowledge required for correlation with other cross-sectional modalities. MCU, however, has stood the test of time, and it has particularly important role in the pediatric population. The ELARA principle should be meticulously followed. There are limited indications in adults, but the information obtained is invaluable and not obtainable by other modalities, and therefore one really cannot afford to forget this art. Thank you.
Thank you.